For more than a century, Neanderthals have stood as a mirror humans hold to themselves. Once imagined as primitive, slouching creatures destined to be erased by the brilliance of modern humans, they have gradually emerged from the shadows as full participants in the long human story. They crafted tools worthy of admiration. They buried their dead. They shaped pigments and adornments. They survived bitter winters, hunted enormous animals, and roamed thousands of kilometers across Eurasia. In 2025, a series of remarkable discoveries revealed an even more startling truth. Neanderthals were not simply adapting to the world that surrounded them. They were transforming it. These top 5 finds may not all be the biggest discoveries of 2025, but they all are fascinating in their own way. What follows are 5 new scientific breakthroughs, each one transporting us deeper into lives lived more than 40,000 years ago. These stories challenge long-held stereotypes, illuminate once-hidden landscapes, and recover moments where Neanderthals left a trace of their humanity, pressed into stone, shell, and sand. These finds are scientific milestones, but they are also something more enduring. They are the messages Neanderthals left behind, still speaking across deep time. Number 1. A factory of fire and bone. The Neanderthal art of rendering fat. The story begins in what is now central Germany, where an ancient lakeside once lapped against muddy shores in a place known as Neumark Nord. Today, it is an archaeological marvel. 125,000 years ago, it was something else entirely. A centre of production that scientists believe served as a large-scale workshop for processing animal fat. Archaeologists excavating the site in 2025 uncovered a staggering concentration of crushed and heated bones belonging to at least 172 animals. Many of these came from large species, horses, cattle and deer, prey that provided enormous quantities of calories. The remarkable consistency of their condition suggests that animals were not simply butchered here. They were systematically processed for fat. This practice breaks open long-held assumptions. Until this discovery, the oldest widely accepted evidence of fat rendering came from sites roughly 28,000 years ago, long after Neanderthals vanished. The work at Neumark Nord pushes that timeline back nearly 100,000 years. Neanderthals lived lives ruled by the seasons. In summer and autumn, edible plants and fruit supplied energy. In winter and early spring, the landscape offered little but ice and bone. Protein alone could not sustain them. Past a certain threshold, the human liver cannot safely process the excess. Without sufficient fat, they would have starved even with abundance all around them. Their response was ingenious. The bones of their prey, particularly femurs and jaw bones rich with marrow, were smashed into small pieces, heated, and likely boiled. Researchers suspect that organic vessels of bark or hide held the bone fragments over fire or charcoal. As fat separated, it could be skimmed from the surface, stored and transported. This rendered fat would have been invaluable, a fuel for the body that required no hunting once prepared. What this reveals is a Neanderthal community practicing long-term planning and advanced culinary technique. This was not improvisation. It was industry. Unknown to modern scholarship until now, Neanderthals appear to have built a network of seasonal harvesting sites where the labour of many individuals produced the surplus that sustained their families. The find demands a reassessment of Neanderthal intelligence. Rendering fat is an act of chemistry, requiring an understanding of heat, timing, and organic material. It transforms a waste product into survival. The archaeological team described the site as a fat factory, an industrial-scale kitchen assembled more than 100 millennia before the arrival of modern humans in the region. This innovation appears not as an isolated curiosity, but as the logical product of an adaptable species. Their ingenuity was driven not by imitation, but by necessity. They were engineers of the Paleolithic world, solving problems with a precision modern scholars are only now learning to appreciate. Neanderthals have long been caricatured as simple hunters, devouring raw meat around smoking fires. At Neumark Nord, the evidence insists on another image: skilled cooks, resource managers, planners, thinkers. They rendered fat not merely to survive, but to live well. Number 2, a bone from Crimea, tracing a Neanderthal migration across continents. If the first story takes us to a lakeside workshop, the second leads us deep into the Crimean Peninsula, where a tiny fragment of bone has rewritten the map of Neanderthal migration. It is barely more than a sliver, but inside it researchers found mitochondrial DNA belonging to a Neanderthal who lived more than 45,000 years ago. They named this ancient specimen Star 1, a tiny portion of a femur that had been mixed with animal bones for decades. Star 1's significance rests not in its size but in its ancestry. Scientists compared its genetic signature with DNA from Neanderthals found across Europe and Siberia. Through this comparison, a surprising pattern emerged. Star 1 appears genetically positioned between European populations and those found in the Altai Mountains of Russian Siberia, 3,000 kilometers to the east. This is a clue of astonishing weight. It suggests that Neanderthals did not simply range across Eurasia in small, fragmented clans. They moved widely, they interacted, they carried knowledge and culture with them. The genetic relationship between Star 1 and individuals from the Altai indicates a shared lineage that may have stretched along a corridor following roughly the 55th parallel north. The idea of Neanderthals migrating across such vast distances challenges the outdated image of them as stationary, isolated peoples. Their movement was purposeful. They followed herds. They responded to shifting climates. They sought new territories. The Starosele site, where Star 1 was discovered, offers other clues. 93% of the animal bones found nearby belonged to horses, indicating that these Neanderthals were highly successful hunters of fast, powerful animals. The landscape supported wolves, bison, and even rhinoceroses, but horses dominated their diet. The tools found at the site reveal methods resembling those used thousands of kilometers away in the Altai, further supporting the idea of cultural exchange across continents. The dating of Star 1 situates this individual at a moment when the world was changing rapidly. Modern humans were drawing near. The climate fluctuated. Glaciers marched and retreated. The land would have been both dangerous and abundant. As researchers reconstructed ancient habitats using paleoclimate modeling, they identified plausible migration routes that would have carried groups of Neanderthals from Crimea through southern Russia and into the Altai region. These corridors would have been lush grasslands at certain times of the Ice Age, supporting vast herds. There is evidence to suggest this route was viable not only once, but again at later times, perhaps around 60,000 years ago. The genetic link forged by Star 1 reminds us that prehistory was not static. Populations travelled the same distances that caravans would much later conquer. They brought ideas with them. This lone bone fragment is evidence of a Neanderthal world far more connected and dynamic than once believed. It speaks to a lineage that did not fade quietly but spread boldly, meeting challenges with migration. They sought not refuge, but possibility. Number 3. The ochre crayons of the Neanderthal world. If migration tells us how Neanderthals moved, the pigments of Crimea reveal how they marked the world they encountered. At sites across Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula, archaeologists recovered 16 pieces of ochre dating from as far back as 70,000 years ago. What makes these fragments extraordinary is that they bear signs of deliberate shaping, engraving, and repeated use as drawing tools. Among the collection is a piece of yellow ochre carved into a crayon-like form. Its tip shows marks of being sharpened and reshaped many times. Under the scrutiny of scanning electron microscopes and portable X-ray scanners, researchers observed surface wear patterns consistent with the tool having been used to draw or apply pigment over extended periods. Another fragment carries engraved, polished surfaces. A third shows microscopic indications of grinding, as though the user thinned or sharpened it to a point. Together, this group of ochre pieces forms an archive of symbolic activity that likely spanned generations. These fragments offer powerful evidence that Neanderthals created symbols, communicated ideas visually, and engaged in cultural practices once thought exclusive to Homo sapiens. The act of sharpening and maintaining a crayon implies intention. The user expected the tool to endure and to be useful again. Symbolic thought is one of the defining capacities of our species. It allows us to condense complex ideas into marks, images, and icons. The presence of such symbolic tools in Neanderthal sites speaks to an intellectual world that was not borrowed, but intrinsic. This discovery challenges the lingering notion that Neanderthals could only mimic the creativity of humans. Instead, it places them squarely within the cultural evolution of art, ritual, and meaning. Their minds, like ours, sought ways to communicate the unseen, according to the report. Or maybe they were just using the crayons to make hides for cutting or other practical things. Why does a crayon only have to be used for symbolic art? Some scholars propose that ochre may have been used to decorate bodies or clothing. Others imagine markings on cave walls or wooden objects long since vanished. Whatever the medium, the message is unmistakable. Neanderthals made marks that mattered. Many archaeologists have tried to draw a line between symbolism and behavior. Who first made art? Who invented meaning? These questions, once imagined as dividing modern humans from all others, now appear artificial. The Neanderthal crayon tells us that the human story is not one of singular invention, but of shared imagination. Art did not begin with us. It began with ancestors whose names we will never know, whose tools of red and yellow earth still carry the imprint of their hands. Number 4. The oldest fingerprint. A Neanderthal leaves his mark. Beneath a Spanish rock shelter called Abrigo de San Lázaro, along the Eresma River valley near Segovia, archaeologists uncovered one of the most intimate glimpses of a Neanderthal life ever recorded. It came in the shape of a granite stone, collected from a riverbed tens of thousands of years ago. Its surface bears hollows resembling eyes and a mouth. A Neanderthal, seeing a face in the stone, enhanced it with a deliberate application of red ochre at the center, forming a nose. Then, pressed into the pigment, he left a fingerprint. This ancient fingerprint, dated to more than 42,000 years ago, is the oldest known fingerprint ever identified. It belongs to an adult male, and it represents a symbolic act captured with astonishing permanence. The find is the earliest known example of portable art associated with Neanderthals. What makes it breathtaking is not simply the pigment, but the layer of meaning. The Neanderthal who decorated this stone did so with intent. He recognized a face in the stone's natural contours, a cognitive act known as pareidolia. He added a symbolic element, perhaps to highlight or perhaps to transform the stone's identity. Then he pressed his finger into his work, fusing his body with the object. For scientists, the discovery required a partnership between archaeologists and the Spanish scientific police. High-precision 3D scanning, X-ray fluorescence, and electron microscopy confirmed that the pigment was not natural, but applied. Specialized multispectral imaging, developed originally for forensic analysis, revealed the fingerprint hidden beneath the ochre. Identification specialists confirmed that the print belonged to an adult human male. This collaboration is unprecedented. It allows for the first time a direct biometric identification of an individual Neanderthal action. It captures something humbling, a moment when a Neanderthal chose to make art and left behind a signature. This discovery builds upon a growing body of evidence that Neanderthals practiced symbolic expression long before they met modern humans. A generation ago, scholars debated whether Neanderthals even possessed language. Today, that question seems quaint. This single object, stone, pigment, fingerprint, reveals something profoundly familiar. The impulse to see oneself in the world, the desire to leave a mark, the act of transforming an ordinary stone into something meaningful. Or maybe it was just accidental and not symbolic, who knows? He held the stone in a hand not unlike our own. He pressed pigment into its surface. His fingerprint survived the collapse of millennia. He did not intend for anyone beyond his small community to see it. Yet here it is, speaking not just to scholars, but to every person alive today. A Neanderthal looked into a stone and saw a face. In doing so, he revealed his own. Number 5. Footprints in the sand. A Neanderthal family hunts by the sea. The final discovery takes place on the Atlantic coast of Portugal, where sweeping dunes once overlooked a shoreline rich with game. Here, near the modern Algarve region, scientists uncovered ancient footprints pressed into dunes roughly 78 to 82,000 years ago. These footprints belong to Neanderthals. More importantly, they belong to a group, including an adult male, a child and a toddler. The prints stride alongside the impressions of red deer, leading researchers to conclude that this was likely a hunting party, possibly a family, moving together across the beach. The image is vivid. A tall, adult male standing approximately 5 feet 6 to 5 feet 8 inches in height, moving across shifting sand. A child, perhaps 7 to 9 years old, keeping pace. A toddler, small and unsteady but present. This youngest child might have been carried, or might have toddled in the footprints left by its elders. The discovery offers an intimate glimpse of group behavior. Archaeologists have often imagined Neanderthal hunting as the domain of males, isolated in small bands. The Algarve footprints reveal something more complex. Hunting may have involved entire families, moving together through difficult terrain. The red deer footprints found alongside the human trail add weight to this interpretation. Dunes provide natural cover, allowing hunters to stalk prey unseen. The trio appears to have used the landscape itself as a tool, guiding their movement toward opportunity. The study suggests that these coastal environments were not occasional stops, but well-used territories. Neanderthals exploited caves, open sites and beaches, harvesting fish, shellfish and large mammals. The dunes where the footprints were discovered may have been close to a campsite, serving as a transitional area between settlement and hunt. The presence of a toddler complicates our understanding of Neanderthal mobility. It implies a cultural acceptance of risk, and a recognition that the transmission of knowledge, how to hunt, how to move through the world, began early. Children did not simply wait for hunters to return, they learned by doing. This snapshot of family life is singular in its immediacy. The footprints might have been made in mere minutes. Yet what they reveal is enormous. They teach us that Neanderthal society was not centered on isolated hunters, but on families. They teach us that hunting and care were intertwined. They teach us that even at the edge of the sea, where waves met sand and dunes shifted in the wind, Neanderthals lived with purpose. In those dunes, a family moved together and left tracks that would outlast them by 80,000 years. They moved not through myth or legend, but across real sand beneath real feet. Taken together, these 5 discoveries of 2025 deepen a portrait of Neanderthals as a people who thought, planned, migrated, crafted, communicated and cared. Their lives were braided into the landscapes of Eurasia. Forests dense with prey, riverbeds rich with hidden stone faces, and coasts where families stalked deer against the roar of the sea. The Fat Workshop at Newmark Nord reveals a population with culinary expertise and communal planning. The genetic identity of Star 1 reminds us of epic journeys across whole continents. The ochre crayons of Crimea capture the mind at work, shaping meaning from earth and colour. The ancient fingerprint in Spain records a human moment untouched by time. The coastal footprints in Portugal portray families working together to survive. In these discoveries, the past is not distant. It is alive. They show us that when Neanderthals encountered the challenges of the Ice Age world, they did not merely endure. They innovated, they travelled, they expressed themselves. They left behind art and memory. They lived rich lives that deserve to be remembered. The boundary that once separated us from them has blurred. Neanderthals stand not as shadows at the edge of humanity, but as relatives whose hands gripped tools like ours, whose children walked beside them, and whose minds shaped pigments that still carry the press of their fingers. Their story is our story, and with every year it becomes clearer. Please check out our other videos and thank you for watching.